today's theme is perspective, and we thought it only right to bring an artist in that will share a little bit more about how to see and interpret works, what is visual language. Eleonore has been working in different countries, now lives in France. She has had exhibition in different spaces as well. So I let her the floor.
So that's next slide. Next is with this one. Oh, here we go. Hi, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for Creative Morning for inviting me. Thanks to that, I lived in London 25 years, so I can speak to you in English. Even if there's still little mistakes, I'm sure, doesn't matter. Lovely to be here and to meet you a little bit. So, also did Les Arts Déco. I don't know where is this, big girlfriend, was it Laurent?
Yes.
And I'm back in Paris now for the last less than a year, which is home really. So I'm an artist, and I discovered quite quickly as an artist when I began to show my work that a lot of people didn't really get what I was doing. It was a little frustrating, and it could be that maybe I'm not clear into what I'm doing. It could be that they don't have the keys to understand what I'm doing. And so people would come to my studio, to open a studio. I begin to talk, and they say, "Oh, you're doing this, that," and I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." And so I'd say 2-3 words, and then eyes open, And I had this experience repeatedly with my own work, but also talking to people about art, or being in museums. And so I felt there's a need really for a little bit of a toolbox I have an assembly of creative people, and most of you probably know visual language already quite well, but it's not the case of everybody. At school, for years there was no history of art, which is really shocking. So that's probably why people lack a little bit in visual fluency. So I'm facilitating the conversation between viewers between the viewers and artworks, and I facilitate also. I do creative workshops. I love working with beginners and intermediary and whoever is coming, of course. But I'm not like a teacher in art school, for example. I like to, I love beginners. Beginner's mind, it's good. And so in the creative workshop, I facilitate that people access their own creativity and how to link that with meaning. So that's the key, is the meaning. So in our Western world, and that's already a perspective, and that's what I know best. So I wouldn't dare talking about all, Chinese, although I find it really interesting. But I try to keep to what I know. So in our Western world, we've been living with that perspective in the middle for centuries. But before that, we were living with the perspective of God is Almighty, and there's a hierarchy, and man is living in the world of God, and and the churches would explain all these narratives. And gold was here for the light of God, and then somebody discovered a linear perspective, and it stayed as a rule for centuries, which is amazing really when you think about it. So we have this focal point, and it's at the level of our eye. And so all of a sudden, the viewer, the man is at the center, not God. Man is at the center, even if it's Jesus who's God. He's a man, and that's a very different perspective. And we lived with that for a century. We are the center of the world as Westerners, and that is expressed by our art. Oops, wrong. Until beginning of the 20th century, where a lot of things changed. We had Freud, we had Einstein, and we had Cubism. which probably is the first artist to put down perspective, although there's a depth, but there's no more focal point, and that is very different. Your mind is working differently if you don't have a focal point. And then we have the beginning of abstraction. Not that there's no depth, but that was a revolution as well. You don't need to represent reality to talk about reality. So art represents the world, art represents reality. So the deep philosophical question in art is, what is reality actually? That's a bit early to talk about that, but here we go. Everybody had a copy. What is reality? And that's what art talks about. So I hope to be participating to opening perspective for people, for us this morning, I hope, but as when I do my workshops and courses. And in the in the text presenting the presentation of this morning, there was a great text, and it says at some point, what you see and how you see it shapes your belief. So yes, we see red, and that enters in us, and we begin to believe red because we've seen it all our lives. Like the perspective, that's the norm, it becomes normal. But I wanted to add as well, and vice versa, what we believe, and it might come from whatever, early environment. What we believe also shape our world. So we believe blue, we look at something and it's blue because that's what we have in our minds. So opening perspectives is also changing that. And art, that's the way I do it, because I know art, so I use art for that. I don't use art, but I do it through art. So for example, through art, so for people here, it's a bit hard to see, but here there's a painting from Masaccio. That's a typical Renaissance painting with the perspective. Now nature is at the back, far away, man is at the center. We have the creation of man here in architecture and focal point. If you see the world like that, it's very hard to understand this. It's just a different perspective. So Shitao, wonderful Chinese painter who did a treatise on painting and ink. It's completely different. Nature is the star here. Man is a small part of nature, and the empty space are very important. And without empty, you don't have the full, and without the full, you don't have the empty. That is saying something completely different than this culture. Here, at exactly the same year, we have Cabanel, who's the representative of the Academy, and he's doing a naked woman, and actually very offered to the viewer. But she's called Venus, so it's okay. We can look at it, as much as we want. It's Venus, so it's fine. And everybody understand then. Well, you can paint Venus naked. It's all right, And then Edouard Manet arrived, and he paints a naked woman, which is full of naked women in museums. And then everybody says, "Oh my God, she's naked." She's naked. It's nude. With two men who are not naked, and so she must be a prostitute. And this is very shocking. And because they didn't have the mind to think, because Manet was probably the first one to begin to stretch people's minds, and he paid the price somehow, because he was quite rejected and not appreciated for a long time. So that's some example. So the role of art, well, I'm sure here everybody had the experience. I'd like to interact more, but we're so short in time that I might be the one talking, and we can talk after. Why is it important? Because art is important. It brings us space and freedom and inspiration, and museums are full of talking images if only we can understand how it speaks. Of course, you can always appreciate the beauty that is easy, but not that easy, because what was beautiful for us now wasn't beautiful then, and still happens for us that things are not beautiful, because we have our criteria. And a powerful work of art challenges our beliefs and, expands our experience, stretches our views, and it participates to the evolution of collective agreement, because we do forget, but we live in collective agreements. And it's like the skin we're in, and Barthes is talking about it goes without saying, he analyzed connotation well about. And there's a lot of things, it goes without saying, and we forget to question it. So we had Duchamp, coming in with a big explosion and saying, fairly early on, because 1915 or 17, well, my concept is art. A concept is art. It's like, wow, that's new. A concept had to be put in a form. And so, whatever, Fontaine will do, because I decide it's art. So we had Malevich, 1915, and the Tsar, it's unbelievable. And he did, he did this. And it's a new vision of the spiritual. He put it in the place where the icons are, but icons had the face of the Christ. So at some point he had to hide, actually, his art. Art can be more obviously carrying a message, like John Hartfield, who was fighting German nationalism. He was himself German. He changed his name out of disgust for what was happening before the war, and then he was sued by the Nazis. He was number 5 on the list of the Nazis who were trying to capture him. He was just an artist, but he do photomontage. He was an activist, of course. He was a very brave man. The one who reads bourgeois newspaper become blind and deaf, off with these mind-deadening bandages. So, is it okay? I'm just a pretty painting. Is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. Beauty is very important, but my view is art is meaningful. You can find the meaning in art. You can put meaning in art. And so, as an artist, how do I do that? And as a teacher, for the lack of other word, how do I help people extract meaning from what they see and also put meaning in what they do? So a little bit on only 3 slides because we're short of time. A little bit of my work as an artist. This is an older work. And I was talking with someone about silence just before. And I was in my studio in Paris. I was living in Paris at the time, wondering, like every morning, what do I do today? It's a big question. I have it every day. I still have it. And what do I do? What do I have to say? What do I have to say to other people? And it's a responsibility. And I felt, well, it's so noisy everywhere, and minds are so busy. And I was doing a lot of meditation at the time, so I had experience of hours, actually days, of meditation, which is an amazing experience. And I felt I'm going to try to put that in my work. So I did this big painting, and the size is important because it's like a pocket of silence. And with little mind events, because when you meditate, your mind is never still. That is a myth. There's things, and there's feelings. So I was trying to carry that experience. In my art, I think the meaning of the work comes from the visual choice. I don't do figurative art, so the form is talking. On the right-hand side, after having done a lot of very quiet and silent painting, I was in England with the experience of having twin babies, and I felt this is not how I felt anymore. So I had to carry that, completely claustrophobic. It's cute, I know them, but there was a lot going on, and it's a valid experience, and how to carry that, and the passion as well, and the lack of space, and so I began to do these life forms, and the marvel for life coming, and at some point where it starts, you lose control, once you're pregnant and you're going to have the babies, and it's like, whoa, and I can't do anything about it. And so realizing that life is uncontrollable, and so I did a series of these life forms, and with coming back, the death of it goes back to space, and it comes out from the space. And I use techniques that are my own techniques. I make them up. So tools that are sometimes a bit bizarre, like balloons, and or parts of my body. And it's really, I like when the painting expresses when the process is equal the meaning. Yeah. So when the process brings the meaning. So on the left, after this big baby phase, began to be a little bit more quiet, and this is probably talking about spirituality and the depths of what we don't see. This very black, not in a bad way, black huge space, and in front there's a veil of the form. It's like us, our minds, our body, in constant change. So this series about that's what it's talking about. That's where people, when it's read, would say, "Oh, it's like a jellyfish," or blood. It's like, no, it's not what I'm doing, but it's fine to see jellyfish. And then I did, that's the one project, but I thought since we're in the place of music, I'd bring it, because being interested in art as language, I contacted musicians, and I was lucky to know very good musicians, so I contacted 10 musicians who agreed to do my project. And they chose a little painting of the same series, and I asked them to duet with it. So it was about, we share the signature of the piece, change of signature. They're gonna do the sound part, and I've done the painting part, and the work is both. And so I installed it on this music stand, and showed it in this beautiful place in London. And it was about two languages making one. I'm very passionate about facilitating the conversation. I think is the best way of saying it. And so I put together courses. I've been teaching for higher education, sort of visual communication, but I always take the student to the museum with a task, so that they're a bit more challenged than a communication image is very coded. It's meant to say something. So I taught that, but then art is more complex. So it's good to also face the art and see what it says. So I bring them to the museum, and I put together a sort of 12-hour course about reading artworks. And when I do this course, I did a sort of very large map of how you can approach an artwork. And I tell people that, I do a little bit of art history because you need the context, but maybe philosophy could help, and maybe sociology could help. Semiology can definitely help. Although people, you can argue that an artwork is not a complex sign, but you can think about it in this way and see what happens. Iconology, all the codes of, even now we can use iconology, allegory, what's the code, what does that mean? And visual language is a big one, learning how is composition talking. It says something because it directs your eye. And philosophy, sociology, all very useful. And if I teach about decoding an image, if some of you are also teaching, or this works very well. This methodology works great because you don't forget anything. So the notation is just looking and describing without interpreting. And when you do that, actually you say a lot. So you hear yourself saying words, you describe the image, and you look at it more to do that. So that's a good step. And then looking at we'll do it very briefly in the next image, looking at the composition and what the visual language does and how it guides your eye to certain places. Connotation is a huge one. You have overt connotation, covert connotation. That says a lot, and that's what you don't know. That's where the message comes underneath, because it goes without saying, as Bart says, but actually there's a lot of message in the connotation, hugely. And then the interpretation at the end. So, for example, these photographs. So if we don't have time for a complete thing, but denotation we'd describe and realize, that the roof is open, there's a foreground and a background, there's this very important here line, and so connotation, I jump ahead. Connotation, well, visual language, it's like all of this is sharp, and everything that's behind the pipe is a little blurred. So the eye, how is the eye, where is it going? Well, maybe it follows this, maybe it goes here because that's the highest contrast. If she was looking at us, we'd probably begin here, but she's not looking at us. And then there's this sign here with a sort of direction, and there's, these lines of perspective. All of that makes our eyes sort of journey into this image. There's the fact that at the background everything's a little more grey, including this, and the texture is a bit rough. The only texture that's really smooth is the milk and her arm and these curvy feminine shapes. So the connotation coming, we can understand what it's talking about roughly by looking at the narrative. It's a woman pouring milk or not. But then the image is saying a lot, like this gentleness of this, and the movement down the earth talks about the values of, the contrast of values, like the black and white, but also and grey, but the moral values. So there's a little bit of an equivalent in the contrast of values with moral values. And it's like the moral value is about going down the earth. This goes to the sky, and it's not saying, it's saying nope, don't go there. Don't go up, in your mind polluting, just go down, that's the direction. You go to the earth, there's nourishment, there's gentleness, it's a feminine shape, it's very smooth, it's sharp and smooth, and there's the movement of care going from the cows to her, to the milk, and that's an offer, that's the generosity. So I probably forget things, but that's a little bit how I work. It's like we take the visuals because everybody can see the woman pouring milk, but how is it said? Roland Barthes, him again, saying photography is, the photograph doesn't exist. because what he means is like we look at the story, and we don't look at the photograph. So I'm inviting my audience to look at how it's made, and there's a lot more messages in there and art, to appreciate it. So this is the creative part of what I do. It's quite full of joy, and I create space in different circumstances, sometimes for companies, sometimes private groups. I use collage, and I create this space where people can express their own meaning, their own creativity. When they're beginners, it's even more amazing because they produce things that are gorgeous, and they're like, I've done that. So it's very rewarding for everybody, for me too. And I think it's also very needed. It's a pocket of time for oneself, and it's quite guided. And usually I invite, depending on the theme, but people come up after a little reflection with a keyword. So it could be, a gift to yourself. What do you need? What do you need in the next 3 months? So people think about it, and they come up like, oh, I need courage, or I need space, I need fun, I need love, I need whatever. And that's the keyword, that's the theme of the collage. And then I guide them into translating that into visuals. And they have 2.5 hours or something, and they do really beautiful things. So, for example, complete beginners there. They were all beginners. So I thought the way Corinne did her veil of perfection is on visual communication is fabulous. It's a little veiled, and in the middle she needed structure. It was a gift to yourself. And complete beginner was like, this is gorgeous. Virginie, on the right, it was more of a coaching workshop, collage your project. And Carrie was changing job. She wanted to express the value she wanted for her next job. Same here, so that's about care. This one is about translating a piece of music into visuals. She was a nurse, beginner, and that was about giving a gift to someone you care for. So she did that for her grandmother. Okay, last slide. We're doing sort of okay. I won't do a big, we don't have time, but if we have time, I'll have you do denotation, visual language, connotation, interpretation. And I just want to say Mondrian is one of these artists who changed the world. He changed the world of art, after a long process of coming to. So that really is about describing reality, painting reality. So he began to paint reality by doing landscapes, very gorgeous ones. So reality is the world I see. And I paint that, and then little by little, he abstracted that until he painted what you see. Is what you get. He painted. So if we describe the connotation of this, is harmony, balance, structure. It expands beyond the frame. It's like the world is stripped from its appearances, and it's left with a sort of skeleton of harmony. And he was someone interested into theosophy and spirit, so he felt that material things is not quite the reality he wants to paint. So without wanting to put words in his mouth, he's not here to say the contrary, but I would say he painted reality, but that's his version of reality, and that's his version of spirit. That's what matters for him. And it's the representation. It's still a representation. You can't avoid representing. You make choice, even if it's in monochrome. Even if you show the stretcher, you say something, painting is my stretcher. Okay, well, painting is the world of spirit. Voila.
Thank you. Eleonore.